And welcome back to centralcoastradio.com. Well, one of the stranger films of 2023 is in cinemas right now. Director Hainyor Parmesan actually really surprised Australian
Congratulations.
really surprised Australian
Send
audiences.
your complaint into the radio station.
Hey, I didn't say hurdy-gurdy. So he surprised audiences a couple of years ago with his film White White Day, and since then people have been really excited to see what his next project would be. Well, his new film is out now, and it's called Godland, and it basically revolves around a young priest called Lucas, played by Elliot Crosset Hove, and he goes on a journey to he's Danish, and he goes on a journey to Iceland to basically plant a church. But there's a lot of politics that come into that. And we also find out that it's a dangerous journey, which has sent a number of people mad over the years. Now, when he arrives there, he comes face to face with Ragnar, played by Ingvar Sigurdsson, who, of course, was in White White Day. The two clash pretty much straight away. And that is just the start of what becomes a strange, strange journey for Lucas. Now, Harley, let's start with you. You saw Godland with me as well. What did you think of this more unusual kind of film?
Yeah. I, to to this day, so it's been 2 days since we saw it, and I'm still spending all day thinking about what did I think of this film. Visually, it is one of the most kind of breathtaking things I've looked at. I love the whole thought behind it. Like even the frame ratio they chose, the aspect ratio was amazing. It's like being part of some old documentary almost, except in full color and very crisp. But yeah, to watch it is something really interesting. You feel like you're in a certain time and place. And then you see the characters and they feel very unbeautiful somehow.
Yeah.
There's a real tension in there of, for instance, Ragnar's character almost has this kind of standoffishness about him when he meets the Danish priest. It's almost like, uh, he's not going to last, and you know, he's kind of an invader to our territory type thing. Whereas on the flip side, Lucas, the priest, is like, they're all just kind of beneath me in some regard. They're here to do a job, like I'm their boss. So there's this real kind of distance between them for a start, and you only have this translator character bridging the gap, and like it doesn't stand out too much, but then when you lose the translator, it's like, oh, the gap just got bigger, and you do start to feel that kind of, yeah, this priest is not ready for this terrain and this really stark, hard wilderness. So the journey into his kind of, you know, absence of sanity, let's say,
Yeah.
not dealing with the pressures and the terrible things that he kind of bears witness to is an interesting journey. But yeah, I'm still to this day thinking, what did I think about that? And given that it's based on true events, so I kind of wonder how much they know about what actually happened, given the way it plays out in the film.
Yeah.
How much do they know and how much was actually recorded? So yeah,
Because
it's a really,
the title card kind of suggests that it was based off those seven pictures that they found.
Yeah, they they
yeah.
they didn't exist. And that's something that I kind of pissed me off. Yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't actually exist. That was just something that they made up for the movie.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
So, because
which I
Well, that's
really
just like, what?
yeah.
I read a quote online that I think actually makes this film a little bit clearer. And it wasn't a critic or anyone that wrote it. It was just somebody who'd put a small review up who watched the film on IMDb, and they said somebody from Iceland will watch this movie and view it very differently to somebody who watches it from Denmark. And again, people that watch it from outside of those two countries will have a different opinion of it as well. And it made me realize that what they meant was at this time in history, Denmark and Iceland didn't like each other. So therefore, it's kind
Yeah,
of
and it shows in the film, like it plays that out really well.
Colonialism
That
and
you,
all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
it's kind of like if you were here in Australia, it would be like the indigenous population with the British coming and bringing all their kind of trash people over to live in the country and yeah, steal their land. So it's you can kind of understand it if you take a step back from that, and it actually plays out really well in that regard in the film. Like a really good job has been done to actually put you in the vibe of that situation. Because even the ones that are half Danish, half Icelandic, they don't want anyone else there either. But it's not necessarily that they don't want just the Danish there. I think they kind of don't want the purely Icelandic there half the time either. Like,
yeah.
but
And
they would probably rather them than the Danish. So it's it's
there's
really
one,
interesting. Nobody wants anyone else on their kind of land.
and there's one that you kind of get a feeling who doesn't want to be there herself. Like
Yeah.
she's just looking for a way to get back to Denmark. So it's interesting in that sense. But what did you guys think more of the way the story plays out? Because there's some weird moments in here, and I'm trying not to go into spoiler territory, but kind of where you see something happen on screen, but then you find out a minute later that it didn't happen, or maybe it did
Yeah.
happen and the rest is a dream.
It was really quite jarring, but because
Yeah.
you're already getting in the mindset of, oh, madness must be setting in. It is the really defining moment of this is the madness.
Yeah,
It's things aren't happening the way you think they are, because a minute later you'll find out it's happening very differently. And there are hints in that. There's these wonderful panning shots where they do a 360 rotation and an unbroken turn of the camera happening slowly where you get all this different narrative happening. And there are little hints in there based on stories you've just heard and things you sort of seen happen. They give a hint as to, hang on, this isn't quite what you think.
yeah.
So
Because those shots like that, they were also very present in A White Day. And I thought that was something that a lot of people didn't like about A White Day, is that there would be an establishing shot of a house or something. And again, it was like some of the homes were in the countryside of Scandinavia. So the camera would stay on it for like a minute before it went inside. And that was the work of cinematographer Maria van Hosselwolf, who also worked on this film as well.
She
And
worked on this one as well.
yeah, I think that's a style that these two have together, and you either love it like I do, or you hate it like I know a few people did with A White Day.
well, I think it achieved what it set out to do really well. So I can't see any reason to hate it. I could understand where if it's not achieved properly, it would be a really annoying thing to watch and really dragging, which was interesting. Like it is a very slow moving kind of movie, and I think that's important to give you the feel that you need to feel to understand what's happening in this movie to be put in that place.
Because
But
Palmerson,
but
sorry,
it wasn't like a dragging movie though.
yeah, like Palmerson says he's much more interested in the narrative of the film than he is the actual plot of the movie. So I guess he's much more interested, the director and writer, he's much more interested in, I guess, putting you in that mindset of what you're watching rather than like having an actual story.
Yeah, and that was
yeah.
the same with A White Day. White Day, sorry, could have easily have been a Liam Neeson revenge film. It was a revenge film, but instead of having huge car chases and stuff like that, you just had these really intense scenes where the character in that film, also played by Ingvar Sigurdsson, went about his revenge in different ways, no less brutal, but in different ways. And yeah, I think that's what I like about this guy as a director. But Kyle, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, I'm very much like Harley. I saw it separately from you two guys, and so I didn't have anybody to talk to. Like, what the hell was that? Afterwards, I didn't have anyone to turn to afterwards. I was like a lost child at the supermarket. Um, yeah, it's uh, undeniably a beautiful movie. Like as you're just saying, the cinematographer Maria von Hasselhoff, the way the movie is shot is just really stunning. The whole the prologue thing about finding these seven plates and having the movie inspired by it, because I spent the entire movie thinking, okay, maybe they'll show the actual plates in the end credits, and then they didn't, and then I found out that was just something that they made up for just to as promotion for the
Yeah,
movie
that
or
really
something.
annoys me now.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
why would you
It
even
pissed
put
me
that
off.
in? Like,
Yeah, I'll talk about this later with Blackberry. But yeah, goddamn, I hate that. I hate movies that lie. But uh, but it's obviously been inspired by that type of photography, this like wet plate photography, and as you see, like the entire movie is shot in this kind of 4:3 um aspect ratio, not even just in like the 4:3, like full screen with black bars at the side aspect ratio that you'd see in something like a Wes Anderson movie, but it's even kind of done in such a way that it looks like one, as you say, Harley, it looks like one of those all time um
yeah, it looks like
photos.
the photos he's developing during the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah,
So I think that was such a clever move
yeah.
to make.
And so yeah, like actually how they set up shots and how basically the beautiful landscapes in this movie um was the way one of the characters puts it as terribly beautiful, and the character of Anna says, oh yeah, yeah, like basically the emphasis on the terrible,
Yeah.
that like
Yes, it
it
is
is,
terrible and
yeah,
beautiful.
it's like terrible and beautiful. It's like, yeah, that it's like when most filmmakers would film these kind of landscapes and these kind of shots, they would use the full frame of the cinema. They'd use full widescreen, IMAX, whatever.
Mm.
And it's interesting seeing them being shot in such a much more restrictive lens, and finding a way to actually put that on the screen, and still having it being kind of like
Yeah,
breathtaking.
and it didn't lose anything at
Mm,
all.
mm,
Like, it was amazing. It just that
yeah,
shot, that one of the early ones looking down into that gorge where they'd been at the
yeah.
waterfall. That
The
was
waterfall,
amazing.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
yeah, like and like you, Hollow, like I really liked it. It was funny that the longest shots in the movie, I think, are those two 360-degree panoramic shots. And like one of them really shows just how barren and empty this landscape is, and the other one is kind of panning around a wedding party and just showing everybody going about their own things, kids playing with
Yeah.
animals and stuff. And it was like both with two completely different feelings that you get from both shots, and I really like that. Um, Sometimes though, I will admit that I do think that it could get a bit well. It goes for like 143 minutes, and sometimes I think that the prolonged um like the lingering meditative shots and like prolonged diatribes of characters can sometimes feel a little overindulgent, which as much like I really, it's funny, like I really love those two 360 scenes, but there's a couple of other shots in the movie I was like, okay, I get the point, can we move along now? And that was the thing, as I said, where this filmmaker, he's not so much interested in the story, he's interested more in the narrative, and I guess in just putting you in this kind of mindset and this kind of lost madness feeling he wants to
Yeah,
envelop his
I
audience in.
think it was important that it was paced and shot the way it was,
Mm,
because it was creating that you're in it now.
mm, mm.
You're not just watching it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
See,
think it
I
just
love films that do that. Like, I'm a big fan of Aussie filmmakers like Bill Masoulas and Jim Stamatakis does, even Terrence Malick. But
oh
I'm
yeah,
really
Malik does
aware
it a
that
lot.
I'm really aware that though that style of film really divides audiences as well. Like I know there's been times when I've seen a lot of European films like this, even at a media screening, and everyone will be walking out saying, "Oh, how dull, how boring! I hated it." And I'm going, "It's a 5-star movie." Like
Yeah.
it, yeah. I think it's an acquired taste, really.
It yeah, it's definitely yeah, like the very definition of kind of a slow burn, thought provoking film. Because as you say, David, it's kind of movie where, uh, like the Icelandic viewer would get one thing from it, the like another audience would get something else from it, and yeah. So I guess it's. I think the best way I saw it described is it's as deep or as shallow as the viewer is willing to give it credit for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
just going to watch this movie and just say, what the hell is just boring, just long shots of nothing, then that's all you're going to get from it. But if you're going to understand what else, I guess try to understand what the director's going for, I think you might appreciate it a lot more. I did
Yeah, I
think it
think
was a
it's
bit
not your sort of general audience movie at
oh,
all,
most
but
definitely. Yeah.
someone who's willing to be like really put
Yeah.
in depth into something like
Mm.
yeah, that's definitely for
Now,
a
now I
different
want
That's
mind.
now I want to see like a 13-year-old cinema goer like accidentally go into this instead of Barbie. I can see what the reaction is.
Wait, so when does Barbie come out? When does the nuke go off? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Well, I
So,
guess I guess to sum it up, guys,
yeah.
what are we going to give this one out of 5, starting with you, Kyle?
Uh, yeah, as I said, it's kind of a tricky one. Um, from my own experience, I'll give it 3.5 out of 5. I really did visually, I was impressed by it. I really did love the look of the movie. Um, I did think that the narrative versus story thing I can get behind, but I think it really probably needed a bit more story early on because it really did seem to just uh put all its eggs right at the end, like straight away, like at the end. That's when everything starts happening, like back to back, all these quick scenes, and so I think I'm fine with the long lingering shots, but I think that the story there was just patches of just kind of nothingness in there that I think needed to be filled up a little bit better. So 3.5 out of 5 for me.
And Harley, what are you going to give this one out of 5?
Yeah, I don't agree totally on all of that. Like, but
Mm,
I do understand where Carl's coming
mm,
from. But there are moments of see, because you're being put in the position of, you know, you want to be made a little bit mad and unaware of things the way Lucas was. So you've kind of missed a big chunk of the narrative while he was like not there.
yeah.
So there are characters who were there for the trek across Iceland who are suddenly not there,
Mm.
and you kind of wonder, oh, what happened to, there was that kid. Was that
Isolation, all that
Ingvar's?
kind of
Was
stuff.
that
Yeah.
Ragnar's son, or was whoever that young guy was? Like suddenly they're all like they're not there, or they're just not in the story. So that's a little bit of something like I kind of wish there were a couple of things put in there, but just as an audience member to know what happened to them, or just to fill in some blanks. But with them not being there, it does put you in this kind of unstable place of creating that mindset that you're a stranger in a strange land and you're kind of losing it. So it kind of works for what it does. So I don't know. I really quite enjoyed a lot of things about this movie, even though part of me says I almost shouldn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, I'm kind of like what you're like there with that, Harley, because my first instinct with this movie is it's exactly the style that I love. I like to call it almost a Shakespearean style. This is the kind of movie that I could imagine Shakespeare would make if he was a film director. With but yeah, like part of me wants to give it 5 stars because I love the way it looked, but I'm like you. I found those kind of glaring holes in the screenplay a little bit jarring. They were the things that made me realize I was watching a film. Like those great 360 shots, they make me feel like I'm there in Iceland with these characters. But then all of a sudden I find myself thinking, hang on a minute, that couldn't have happened because now he's there. Like, and that kind of thing took me out of that moment of being in Iceland with the characters and put me back in a Palace cinema in Melbourne. So to me, it loses a little bit because of that. So I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5, just because, yeah, I thought those glaring kind of, I don't even want to call them errors because maybe the director meant to do them, but those glaring moments kind of made me feel like, yeah, you're watching a film, you're not actually there. So,
Yeah, were there things of deliberate omission or just kind of we didn't bother writing that bit? Or yeah,
continuity error, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So there we go. We all had a very, very widening view of what we thought of Godland. Kyle gave it 3.5. I gave it 4.5, and Harley gave it 4 stars. It is on limited release, so make sure you check your local cinema guide if you want to go and see Godland. You are listening to centralcoastradio.com.